Hello, my fellow citizens. Welcome to Citizen Smith on this Wednesday, January 13th. 7 days from Joe Biden's inauguration and a new president for our country. I can't wait for change. Can't you? Right now, on this historic Wednesday, the second impeachment trial of President Trump is underway, as the House of Representatives currently are debating the rules. As I record this show just before noon on Wednesday, and then they will move on to a debate and the articles of impeachment, and then vote. And everybody expects this vote to be approved with a majority, and then it's on to the Senate, where they need 2/3 majority to convict. Well, I guess this is necessary in political terms and needs. As a citizen, I think it's a waste of time. Am I wrong? I just think we should move on as a country. The Senate's going to have to vote on this after the inauguration if they go that route. President Trump is going to have to represent himself with his lawyers and fight back. It could go on and on. Just dragging the country down in the process, I think. Some people say, no, this absolutely must go through. I've heard some senators saying that, U.S. senators. I'm not so sure about that, but who am I to say? I'm not a politician. This is very much a political scenario and development. Citizens have to sit back and watch. It's painful to watch this impeachment again of a president. It's one of those things when I was watching Watergate as a kid. I didn't understand what was going on, but I knew it was serious, and I knew it was very bad for America. How does a child feel today watching our country? When I was 6 years old watching the Watergate trials, I looked on curiously, trying to understand my country that I lived in. Not understanding at all what was going on, but knowing it was bad. Try to talk to your children about this and in a calm and rational way explain what's going on. So let's take a look, though, at the proceedings itself and where they can take us. The House of Representatives and the House controlled right now by the Democrats. The Senate soon to be a slight majority of senators that are Democrat controlling the U.S. Senate. Well, the House right now holds the floor to vote on one or more articles of impeachment. This can happen. Either less than a majority of the House votes to impeach, and then Trump remains in office. If a majority of House members vote to impeach, Trump, as impeached at that time, the House determines if and when to send the article to the Senate. It could do nothing further, effectively holding out the charges in perpetuity. I find that unlikely, but I don't know. With this heated U.S. Senate and House, anything's possible. So once the Senate gets it, which they likely are going to, everybody's expecting that at least. And again, this is in the New York Times. I laid it out nicely here for all of us to understand. If the article withheld until after change in control, as after President Biden gets into office, the Democratic-led trial then will continue later this month under a Senate that will be controlled by the Democrats as the majority flips, since Georgia has now 2 Democratic U.S. senators. And upon receipt of the article, the Senate must soon begin a trial, but there is discretion in the schedule and pace of the process. Afterward, the Senate holds a vote to convict or acquit the former president. If the articles are sent immediately to the Senate, Republican-led trial unlikely. Mitch McConnell has said the Senate will not return until January 19th, the last full day of Trump's term, making a trial unlikely before the inauguration. Let's just get this straight. The trial in the Senate will not happen before the inauguration. It will happen after Joe Biden is sworn in. Predicts Citizen Smith here. 2/3 or more of the members of Senate must vote to convict. If Trump is convicted, then he is guilty, and this is the interesting part. I didn't know any of this until I started reading up about it. Actually, one of my friends brought it to my attention, my friend Paul, who was working in China. He said this first, and I was like, really? That can happen? So if he's guilty, separate votes are then needed to prohibit Trump from receiving benefits given to ex-presidents, like his pension, I believe. And it will also bar him from future political office. That's huge. So this is why, if the U.S. Senate really goes ahead, they stick it to the president big time. And that's never happened to a president before, that I understand. And if it is in the Senate and fewer than 2/3 of the members vote to convict him, then, simply put, Trump is acquitted. So there you have it. My prediction is the House sends it to the Senate. The Senate then isn't any. Trump has the ability to fight back. He will have legal representatives. This will be dragged on. Do you want to do that to the country? I'm not exactly 100% sure of this, but I think the U.S. Senate might just let it lie. Do they really want to bring this lengthy legal process for the world to watch as the president faces the Senate for impeachment and a conviction? Or do we get on with our lives in this country with Joe Biden first and foremost addressing the COVID crisis and the coronavirus vaccines that need to be put out for Americans? That's really where we need to go. I mean, we're talking about people dying here in America, a pandemic that is destroying the economy, that is killing people. This needs to be on the top of the agenda of the U.S. Senate and the House and the president. Anything else is a detraction from us moving ahead as a country. Please, everybody, let's take care of this pandemic once and for all. Don't let politics get in the way. Besides, I think the president probably has a good defense that he didn't incite insurrection. He could win this, and then it's all a waste of time. So I'm playing devil's advocate here, right? That's what this show's about. Critically thinking, taking an opposing view where it seems rational to do so, than what the vehemence and vitriol of a political system right now is in. I don't think they're thinking as clearly as they should. But since when did politics always base their decisions on rationale over emotion? But this case is one where I hope they do. It's not like Trump doesn't deserve a conviction, but at the same time, what does the country deserve right now? Those are the two things we need to weigh. Speaking of the COVID, the vaccine is now being pushed out to increase the amount throughout the country to states. With a push now, the government is saying 65 and older must get the COVID vaccine ASAP. And in so doing, Kate Brown of Oregon, like all governors, has said, yes, they are ready to move, but this was a sudden change in the COVID recommendation by the Centers of Disease Control. But everybody 65 and older, get ready. But please don't bother us with questions right now. We're not ready yet to help you. So don't call your doctors and the pharmacists. Let us get things in order and get ready to do the vaccines for 65 and older. And then we can all get one after that, right? I hope it gets into the general population. Boy, has this been a slow rollout. Lawmakers also were tested positive in the situation when they were hiding from the rioters. This is interesting. Lawmakers, all Democrats, said they had fled during the attack to a room where Republican lawmakers refused to wear masks, and thus they got COVID. Why are the Republican lawmakers not wearing masks in the Capitol? Come on. That's just stupid. As this quote says by one of the lawmakers who got it, Brad Schneider, Democrat from Illinois, said, quote, I don't know from whom I got this virus or even necessarily if I got it in that room, but I know that my exposure in that room was greater than at any other time for this entire pandemic, said Mr. Schneider, who sharply criticized his colleagues for refusing to wear masks. Quote, the people refuse to wear masks out of, I struggle for the word, it's more than arrogance, it's more than contempt, it is a desire to cause injury to others, he said. And I'm reading this from the Wall Street Journal story today. And they're saying it's pretty clear that the riot on Capitol Hill was a super spreader event. Oy vey, oh boy, here we go. Now the lawmakers are going to get this damn thing. And finally, the House, the Democrats who were seeking language on Tuesday evening that would fine lawmakers who don't wear a mask on the House floor will now be fined $500 for the first offense, $2,500 for the second offense, with the money coming from the members' pay. And additionally, the acting House Sergeant at Arms notified lawmakers and staff that they would be screened before entering the House chamber, reminding them that firearms are allowed only in a lawmaker's office, and the notice said that members must wear a mask on the House floor. Quote, members not wearing a mask will not be admitted to the floor, and members who fail to wear a mask will be removed from the floor, the notice said. Can you believe they have to, at this point in the game, they're addressing it now? This should have been addressed last March. These are our leaders, our lawmakers, telling us that we need to wear masks, that it should be mandatory in all public places, and the very public place where the lawmakers are gathering, it wasn't mandatory. And there's Republicans not wearing masks. Get a clue, people. Wow, is this frustrating to read. Exasperating. Now they have to pay a fine. Now it's mandatory to get on the House floor. What are they thinking? And finally, on the COVID front, and this is about time too, anybody entering the U.S. aboard an international airline flight must show proof of a negative COVID-19 test before boarding the flights to our country. This issued by the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention yesterday. Travelers arriving on international flights to the U.S. will need to get tested within 3 days of flying, and airlines will be required to deny boarding to anyone without documentation of a negative test, the CDC said. The Canadian government is also implementing this. Again, this should have been done months ago. I don't know why. I think anybody flying on a plane, period, should be getting tested. In the country, domestic flights or international flights. Across the board in the world. Who should be requiring this? Anyway, as we play catch up to try to stop the spread, things like implementing tests before international flights and mandatory requirement of our lawmakers are finally in place. 9 to 10 months afterwards, after the virus had started and the pandemic was underway. Boy, does it take us a long time to get smart. Anyway, sorry about that rant. I'm just feeling very frustrated today reading all this news and this idiocy that's going on in our country and world. We should have had a handle on this thing by now. I mean, I know maybe I'm being too optimistic, but let's get this damn vaccine rolled out. This is another blunder going on with the states and the federal government not working together. Enough said. In segment 2, I'll be talking about the financial situation in America, also Oregon, as I talk to a financial advisor, Mark Gaskill, President, CEO, and CIO of MKG Financial Group in Portland, Oregon, will be joining me. He's been in the securities business since 1977, follows economic trends. He'll be talking to me about how 2021 is looking, and I'll look back at 2020 for our economic situation, trends, and what's going on in the future of our global economy. That's what he does for a living, and that's why he's going to be talking to me next on Citizen Smith.
TalkCast PDX is a digital platform for local talk shows, live video streaming shows, and podcasts originating from Portland, Oregon. We are committed to a diversity of opinions and quality talk that offers something for everyone. At our brand new state-of-the-art studio, we offer a wide range of services to meet every type of broadcasting need. Yes, we will help you record and edit your podcast or program. We also help you distribute on multiple platforms, and we can also help you transcribe your show for a blog. We offer video services and promotional services, as well as ad revenue packages. Email us today for a special introductory offer. Everything you need to start your own show as soon as possible. We're here to help. Go to TalkCastPDX.com, that's TalkCastPDX.com, and send us a message today.
It's time for Citizen Smith.
This is Citizen Smith. One thing I've been following closely on the show is the stock market. I read the Wall Street Journal every day, and over the COVID crisis, Wall Street has held strong. There's been some down times, but surprisingly, people seem to be interested in investing in stocks. And as we start 2021, the Dow Jones Industrial Average rose 1.6% for the first week of the year, marking its fourth straight weekly gain despite our Capitol riot and the COVID pandemic. So to help me understand what's going on in the American economy, financial markets, the stock market, joining me now is Mark Gaskill. He's the president and CEO of MKG Financial in Portland, Oregon, and he's been in the business since 1977, so he knows what he's talking about. Welcome, Mark. Thank you for joining me on the show today.
Thank you for having me on your show, Citizen Smith, and I appreciate joining you.
So let's talk about this crazy stock market that when I look at what has happened during a pandemic year, I ask myself, how can a stock market be succeeding and people investing even in greater numbers when a pandemic's going on? What's going on?
Well, there were a couple of phases to it. I mean, first of all, we dropped almost 11,000 points in literally a month. And that's kind of between February and March of last year. And a lot of people really took it to heart that it was an economic-driven environment, and this was just going to devastate. And you heard that too. You know, we weren't going to see a recovery for 10 years. But the problem with an event like a pandemic is it literally is an event-driven environment. We saw the same thing happen in 9/11 with the terrorist attack on the World Trade Center. We weren't in an economic recession, but it creates an environment that's really bad. But some areas do good, some areas do bad. And that was the same thing that happened then, same thing that happened now, that if you were going to get stuck at home, there were going to be areas that were going to absolutely benefit from the situation. It just caught a lot of people by surprise, and a lot of that was a combination of the market falling almost 11,000 points, and it just got too cheap. It just didn't make any sense.
The spike in stocks, well, the IPOs went through the roof with tech industries again. We had a tech bubble back in the 90s when I was doing radio in Alaska, I remember, and the tech bubble burst and all these tech companies went under. Could that happen again? Do you see any red flags or warnings there?
Not on the current situation. And the reason it goes to the heart of what we were saying, you're going to have the vaccines coming in. Moderna's coming on strong. Pfizer's got their vaccine. And when that starts kicking in, and we saw a lot of this last year, where all of a sudden you saw people getting put back to work and you started raising the activity in the economy. That's what's going to happen this time also, is that you're going to have the vaccines kicking in. You are going to see more hiring happen. And you're going to see, it really comes down to consumer spending. And, you know, we saw last year people sitting at home, but they were buying cars. They were buying motorhomes. They were buying new furniture for their house. Okay. Same thing will happen again this year. I believe that we're going to see most of this year, as the vaccine kicks in, you're going to see a jettisoning upside, jettisoning the stall, so to speak, and you're going to see things pick back up again.
You're in the market in Portland. I don't know if your customers go beyond the city or state, but Geographically speaking, do you see the Northwest any different than the rest of the country in Portland and Seattle? Those cities are tech-driven. They kind of shadow each other, Seattle being much more of a financial hub. How do you picture the future of 2021 and 2022 for these two cities in the Northwest?
I think it's going to be pretty stable. I know in Portland right now we have an extremely strong real estate market, and it's driven a lot by the fact that interest rates have been so low. And so it's the same type of thing. People sitting home, they go, we've always wanted a different house. They're actually saving money by not going out and doing a lot of things. And the thing about Portland is a very big mask city. You don't get away with going out and not taking your mask with you and try to get into stores and stuff like that. And so you have an environment where people are very sensitive about what's going on. And I think you'll see the same thing up in the Seattle area as well. And so I believe that on an all-around basis, this is an area that you're going to continue to see thrive. And as the economies come back, you're going to see people moving to cities like Portland and like Seattle, Pacific Northwest, as an example. It just kind of fits the environment and lifestyle.
You've been in the security business, as I mentioned, since 1977. You have a great historical perspective. How do you see what's going on today compared to the ups and downs you've seen in your very long career?
Well, I see actually this has pulled a lot of people into basically, obviously, investing into the stock market. And you see that when you have markets do what this market did. And there is no doubt about it. It was a crazy year last year and a lot of misery if you take a look at everything that basically transpired, especially with the number of deaths that we've had because of the pandemic. But to the other side of that equation, you also have had people take a look at opportunities and where to basically put money to work and things of that nature, and that's worked out very well. And it's also it's helped a lot of companies. As you mentioned, it's been a good IPO market. It's been a good way of basically getting a lot of companies out in place. I mean, take Moderna as an example. We own Moderna for our clients. We bought early, did our homework, very research-driven, but it's a completely new technology in the medical field, bringing vaccines and therapeutics to the market, and how fast. I mean, it used to be you wouldn't see a vaccine for 5 years. We saw vaccines show up in a year, and that wouldn't have happened if it hadn't been the pandemic situation. I mean, Moderna's been around for 10 years, and they were moving forward, but they got a big shot in the arm to basically push themselves forward. And at this stage of the game, they're in the early phases of basically where they're going, and it's a new territory. So you saw that in a lot of areas, and it really helped the technology market. Truly, I mean, Zoom as a way of communicating. I mean, we saw video conferencing back in 2001 when we had the terrorist attack and people could not fly because of that situation. And so video conferencing suddenly became really popular, but probably not like what we saw this time around because of the schools and communication from work and things of that nature, talking to clients, etc. And so there's more staying power, I think, in terms of the direction that we're going, and I think you're going to see a very healthy economy, new administration coming on board. I think you're going to see a lot of things good for the remainder of this year, and then we'll take a look how next year, is going to shape up.
How do you feel about the Biden administration compared to the Trump administration? Trump had a strong economy. Did you do well? Did you see the financial market over his 4 years as a great market for what you're doing, or mediocre? And how do you compare it to what you think Biden will bring to the table?
Well, I think we had some ups and downs. The biggest plus, if you will, in the Trump administration came with the tax cuts that were very early on. And you hear the saying that, well, he inherited a strong economy from the prior administration, which was the Obama administration. I mean, it was really true. There was no doubt about it. You can just look at the whole period of time going forward, and that growth in the economy and also unemployment falling just continued to go down to record levels, and so that was a big plus. Plus, you add a lot of money into the economy, and then the Fed was holding pretty strong, but then as we moved towards the pandemic, the Fed started cutting interest rates, and so you have interest rates at such low levels, and that's why the housing market, for instance, and consumer spending has been very good. So realistically, it was a pretty good period of time, but I would say probably from my perspective, this was because of what we saw happen last year in the pandemic and the way it reshaped the way things were. And there's an old rule that I kind of play by. When you get a market due like this market did last year as an example, and you're looking at the overall economy, you have what's called shuffle the deck. And that was one of the things that probably you saw a lot of people do really good on investing. And that was really the big thing, was basically repositioning yourself where you're going to get the biggest advantage out of what's going to go up. And you always pay attention to the economy. And so what you had was really what turned out to be a relatively economy last year, to the surprise of everybody, and you had stocks that just got underpriced, and so you went in and you took advantage of that situation. So I think under the new administration, I think what we're going to get this time around is more money going into the economy, because there's a lot of need for really stabilizing the financial aspects of the economy, getting money back into the hands of the people, and helping out the consumers. I mean, there's some consumers out there that can't pay their rent. And so you're going to get that kicking in. But then I think you're going to see the new administration look at the job market and some of the things that really to happen under the Trump administration, and I think that that's going to be really good, hopefully in the areas of infrastructure, as well as continuing to help out into the areas of technology and areas of growth like that.
On your LinkedIn site, it says that you deal with high net worth individuals and families and organizations in the Pacific Northwest, and that's who you service. How does a high net income family differ from, say, a middle income to somebody just trying to pay the bills? And how do you differ in how you approach it from a financial investment standpoint?
I appreciate the question. That's a great question. A lot of it is equal, but you're dealing with different sizes of assets to work with. And that's a big factor you need to take into consideration when you're sitting down with somebody and you're saying, okay, what do we have to work with? And we got to take the risk factors and the turbulence of the markets into consideration. The other side has to do with the age. If you're younger, you've got more time to basically put more money to work. My son works with me here at my office in my firm, and he's 30, and he's at that stage where starting to put money to work is going to become a bigger and bigger situation for him. So you're dealing with a whole different situation on that basis. But the bottom line is, when you're dealing with high net worth individuals, they've got more money to put to work, they're willing to take a little bit more risk. But then as they get older, they're still falling into the sidelines where they want to be a little bit more cautious, a little bit more, how would you say it, risk adverse. Your worst problem right now is that interest rates are so low, you really don't have the bond market to put money away into. So you're looking for alternative incomes. And when I say that, most people do not want to basically say, okay, I'm going to be a little bit diversified here, but they don't want 1%, 2% for their money. I mean, they need diversification. So then you're going in and you're looking at alternative income investments, utility stocks, REITs, real estate investment trusts, things of that nature that can continue to get them the income they want for diversification and still be able to the stock market. And so you kind of handle people differently. Does it mean you avoid the people that don't have money? No. We actually have, it's an open door policy. You have only so many hours in the day, but we do take on clients that are somewhat lower in the amount of assets they have to put to work. But we work on the basis, when you're an advisor, you're investing kind of for everybody in the same way. I might buy less of something for use, more of something for somebody else, but you both own the same thing. And so you just basically diversify difference, and that's where we put our biggest difference.
You also say that you like to follow the major growth and economic trends in the country. So I'm going to ask you once again to prognosticate 2021 economic trends.
We're known as a top-down investment manager, and top-down means you start with the economy, you work down to the areas that are going to benefit from the economy, and then in those areas, what are the companies that you're going to want to own? Obviously, in retail, you'd be silly not to own an Amazon as an example, but you start basically, is the consumer going to spend, and why are they going to spend, and how are they going to spend? So going from a top-down approach looking forward, I think you're going to see, let's get our arms around the pandemic situation. You're going to start seeing the economy come back. We're going to basically see businesses starting to hire again. So the employment picture is going to get better as we go forward. I think the first half is going to be the stabilization with the new administration. The pandemic is going to get a shot in the arm, so to speak, because of the vaccines. And then we'll go into the second half of next year, and I think that will be really the strongest part of the year. I think it'll be a benefit of the economy coming back strong. And I think the difference is, I think under the current administration, the new administration, I think there'll be more control, more constraints. The biggest problem we had last year is that we started putting people back to work, and that was really great, but we didn't have the pandemic taken really under control. And that's got to be done hand in hand. And I think that that's going to be the biggest difference between the two administrations, is that I think the new administration is going to work through getting the pandemic behind us, but they're going to work through in a way that's going to make it happen. And yes, they'll have the vaccine to really work with, but you also want to make sure you can get your arms around it. So if it starts going bad again, starts going the other direction, you really have to step up and make some changes and decisions that were not made in the last go around. And I think that that's going to be probably the biggest difference. And I think that that's going to give us a pretty stable economy going forward.
Okay, very good. That was more of a medical trend than an economic trend. But, you know, the one people that they say really benefited, though, in the pandemic were people in higher income brackets. They didn't take hits. They actually made money. Do you see that?
Yeah, I would say that that's probably true. A big reason for that is because they had the money to put to work. I mean, when you're sitting here, and so I'll give you the economic side of it. You know, when you see people sitting at home and they're starting to buy $300,000 motorhomes, that's obviously, and that did happen. That wasn't happening with people that were in the lower brackets and that didn't have as much money. What you did see happen, however, is that all of those people were buying cars. They were sitting at home. A new technology wave that has moved into the auto industry is that you can buy, and I know people have done this, you can buy a car, have it delivered on a flatbed truck, and they'll drop it off in the front of your house, and they'll take their trade in, they'll take it with them. And that type of thing does happen. But we literally saw a great year last year for people buying new cars. Same thing as buying new furniture. Same thing as buying new houses, for that matter. And so I think that that's going to basically continue to happen, and you are going to see some opportunities for the people who are in the lower level of the income and asset gathering period of their lives, where they will be stepping up to buying first-time homes and things of that nature, which they can do at the lower interest rates. That's going to help out a lot from that standpoint.
Very good. Well, thank you for joining me. Mark Gaskill, President, CEO, and CIO of MKG Financial Group in Portland, Oregon. We'll talk again. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's been fun.
And that does it for today's Citizen Smith. I will talk to you again on Friday.